إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بالإحسان إلى يوم القيامة. يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Allah has blessed this day and Allah has blessed this month, for we are in Jum'ah and we are in Ramadan, and we ask Allah to bestow upon us al-Rahmah, mercy, al-Maghfirah, forgiveness, al-Afiyah, pardon. And we ask Allah to allow us to acquire all of the benefits that exist for Jum'ah and all of the benefits that exist for Ramadan. As for the khutbah today, my topic, it's a very complex and complicated topic. It's a very painful topic. And I'm going to start off this topic with what Allah says in the Quran. Allah says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Allah says, encourage one another via positivity and piety, but don't embolden one another via sin and enmity. And also something that Allah mentioned in the Quran, Allah says, have you seen those who take their desires as their God? Are you then their enabler? And then I'm going to mention something that Muhammad, peace be on him, mentioned. He said, help your brother, regardless of whether he is oppressed or the oppressor. The companions who heard this, they were shocked because they didn't know how to respond. They didn't know how to understand this. And they replied, they said, oh, Mr. Allah, we know how to help our brother if he's oppressed. How do we help him if he's the oppressor? And Muhammad, people said, seize his hand, meaning stop the oppression from occurring. The reason why I bring this up is because there's a particular subject that affects all people, but Muslims specifically, that for one reason or another, Muslims have a propensity, we have a propensity to shy away from this issue, and there are various reasons outlined. The subject is al-ikhtisab, sexual abuse. Al-ikhtisab is something that is rampant in the world. It is something that is very common. It's something that's mashhur. It's something that's known. It's mutawatir. It's common knowledge. It's widespread. However, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who either try to pretend that this is not a real thing that Muslims experience and go through, or they try to, as they say, quote unquote, sweep it under the rug. And from my professional experience being a chaplain, working with people, counseling people about al-ikhtisab, there's some very striking statistics about this issue. And I'll go through some of them. At least 98% of people who have counseled pertaining to suicide, for example, right? Regardless of whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, 98% of people who I have counseled pertaining to suicide have been sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. 98% of people who I have counseled pertaining to al-liwat, in terms of sexual identity crisis, in terms of homosexuality, 98% of those people have been sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. Globally, historically, 97% of people who are sex workers have been sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. Now, that doesn't mean that the sexual abuse is a direct causation of these things occurring, but the connections and the intersectionality is undeniable. So these are obviously things that should be on our radar. These are things that should be red flags for us to investigate, for us to try to seek solutions for. But again, like I mentioned before, the problem is that you have some people, they try to pretend that these things don't exist. And I'm here to tell you that these things do exist. And the more that we pretend that these things don't exist, the further they're going to spread. The more people are going to be negatively affected. The more people are going to be hurt. I know people personally who have complained to other people about being sexually abused, and they were dismissed, and they were ignored. I know people personally who are currently in prison right now for being sexual abusers. And I'll mention a particular case. This happened last year. I was working on someone's case, and the family of this person, they reached out to me personally because I know the person and I know their family. And they wanted me to work on the case. They wanted to be a counselor. They wanted me to be a counselor. They wanted me to be a chaplain for this person while their case was proceeding. So via the duration of the case, because I know the person personally, I asked the person, I said to them, why didn't you come to me before this happened? Why didn't you come to anyone before this happened? And the person said to me, I was afraid that I was going to be judged. So this is something that was very important for me, because in my profession as a chaplain, the main thing for me is to make a concerted effort to be non-judgmental, to not look down upon people regardless of the negativity that they do. My job as a chaplain is to see people and recognize people where they are, and to try my best to give them tools of tawfiq, of empowerment, so that they can arrive to a space of tahseen, improvement. But there's no way that you can do that if you feel like you're better than someone. Like I always tell people, you'll never be able to help anyone if you deem them to be inferior to you. And one of the problems for us as Muslims is that one of the reasons how and why so many people refuse to seek help when they're dealing with different types of sins, different types of vices, is because they think or they know that they won't be supported. Or they think or they know that people will judge them before helping them. And then what ends up happening is that the condition of these people worsens. And they end up doing worse things to people, and they end up being more destructive. So the destruction is on two ends. You have the people who are the victims and the casualties of this abuse, who are not being helped, who are being ignored, who are not being taken seriously. And then on the other hand, you have the perpetrators of the abuse, who also need help, and they're not being helped, they're being ignored. Ignoring both of them is equally negative. Because just like all of us need help when we fall short and when we sin, these types of people who do these types of actions, they need help also. And we have an obligation as Muslims to facilitate ways to protect people from abuse, and also to provide healing for those who have been abused, and also to provide healing for those who abuse. Because it's not just the mazlum who needs to heal. It's the zalim who needs to heal also. It's not just the oppressed who needs to heal. It's the oppressor who needs to heal also. But unfortunately, we don't look at it from that angle, and we need to. The reason why this is so important, again, as I aforementioned, is that this is an issue that a lot of people refuse to want to speak about, because obviously, for obvious reasons, it's painful, it's shameful, it's embarrassing. Some people don't want to speak about the issue because they themselves are abusers. Some people don't want to speak about this issue because they themselves have been abused. And particularly amongst men, there are many men who are abusers, and this is why they don't want to bring this issue up, because they don't want to be exposed for their oppression against other people. And then you have certain men, they don't want to bring up this issue because it triggers them and it reminds them of themselves being abused. And one of the other things that is very important to know is that it's not just women and children that are the subjects of this abuse. There are grown men who are the subject of this abuse as well. Like, I've counseled people who were formerly incarcerated, and they've disclosed to me that while they were in prison, they were sexually abused while in prison. But obviously they can't speak about this. They think or they feel they can't speak about this because they think or feel that they'll be shamed. And unfortunately, a lot of people are shamed because of this. A lot of people, they'll look to a man who's been sexually abused and they'll think, oh, why didn't you fight back? Or why didn't you resist? Or why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? That's very easy to say when you are not on the receiving end of that oppression. It's very easy for us to assume, oh, well, why didn't you tell someone? Or why didn't you do something? When you are in that type of situation, in that vulnerable, decrepit, weak situation, that's not really an easy thing to disclose what you've been through, or to disclose what someone had planned to do to you. It's not easy for someone to admit that they have survived that type of ordeal. It takes courage. It takes basala. It takes courage to admit something like that. And even on the other end of being an abuser, it takes courage to admit that you've done something that wrong. And one of the reasons how and why people end up being worse abusers is because they feel that, they think and they feel that they can't come to someone before it gets that bad. They think and feel, they allow a shaitan, they allow Satan to make them think and feel that they have to be on this track because no one will believe that they need help. No one will believe that they really want to get better. So they submit themselves to their desires, and they end up being worse, and they end up doing worse, until it becomes circumstances and consequences that are completely out of anyone's control and that are irreversible. So what I want people to learn from this khutbah is to be open to receive people when they need your help. Because there's people who literally suffer in silence because of this issue. Either because they are victimized by abuse, or because they themselves are the abuser and they're dealing with their own demons and they think that there's no way out. We have to facilitate the way out for people, whether they've been abused or whether they've been the abuser. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. إن الحمد لله رب العالمين وكفى والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم المصطفى وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Before I begin the second half of the khutbah, I received an announcement from Ibn Sina Center. They're providing iftar for the people to break their fast and enjoy food during Ramadan, and they need assistance in terms of facilitating the cost of the iftar. From what I was told, the amount that is needed is $6,000. So we are asking the community to give whatever you can to support the efforts of Ibn Sina to continue their work, specifically during the Ramadan, in terms of giving a sadaqah to the people, in terms of providing iftar so that people can break their fast and enjoy food. And before you leave, make sure you give whatever you can toward that effort and continuously give toward the efforts of Ibn Sina. So in terms of the second half of my khutbah, one of the things that I always use in terms of engaging people about this issue, or just any other issue that a person is dealing with, I have a coined term that I use for myself. It's an acronym called REP. And REP, it stands for three things. It stands for respect, empathy, patience. Respect, meaning that I view every single human being as my human equal, regardless of whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. This is important because if a person is coming to us with an issue, whether they're being victimized by the issue or whether they're victimizing others by the issue, we still have to respect people, even if we hate what they do, even if what they do causes us to hate them. Because Allah says in the Quran, chapter 5, verse 8, Allah says, and never let your hatred against any people prevent you from behaving justly. And again, if we want what is best for people, if we want people to improve, we have to respect them. We have to respect the fact that they are experiencing a fitna, a test, a trial. And if we really love for our brother what we love for ourselves, we have to be willing to be open to help them. Regardless of what they've done, if they truly want to improve, we have to give them that bara, we have to give them that agency to improve. And we see countless examples during the lifetime of the Prophet where people, they sinned, and they committed huge, egregious sins. But when they came to Muhammad, peace be upon him, for a tahseen, for improvement, he didn't shun them, he didn't dismiss them, he didn't curse them. And this is because Allah commanded him to not do so. Like, for example, Allah says in Surah Al-Duha, right? Allah says, and as per the inquisitive, don't dismiss them. Like, if they ask you about anything, if they're investigating about anything, if they want to know anything, don't dismiss them. A lot of times people, they don't seek out help for their vices, for their sins, because they think and they feel and they fear that they will be dismissed. We cannot be the people who dismiss people. We have to be the people who embrace people. Now, whether a person deserves to be punished or prosecuted, that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day. At the same time, we have to be the people who embrace people and make them feel comfortable sharing what's on their mind and what's on their heart so that they can arrive to a space and place of healing. Whether they're victimized by oppression or whether they're the ones who commit oppression. The second thing is empathy, concern, compassion for other people. This means that regardless of whether you have a shared experience with another human being, you try to imagine what life must be like in the shoes of another person. Try to imagine the trauma, the fitna that a person must be going through, whether they're abused or whether they're the accuser. Try to imagine what life must be like for a person struggling with those demons, struggling with those sins. Try to imagine what life must be like having those types of fitna, having those types of struggles. And then the third is patience. Because in my line of work, I'm confronted with a lot of uncomfortable things. I'm confronted with a lot of painful things. Like, for example, the person that I mentioned, the Muslim that I mentioned, who his family reached out to me to work on their case, he's currently serving a prison term for his sex crime. I had to exercise a lot of patience. Because when he was telling me his story, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to hurt him really, really badly. But I knew that that wasn't going to solve the problem. I knew that I had to have a siyam. Ironically, since we're speaking about Ramadan and a siyam, the original definition of a siyam is self-control, self-restraint. So I had to practice a lot of siyam, a lot of self-restraint. I had to exercise a lot of patience when dealing with the narrative of this person, when they were disclosing, when they were detailing their sexual abuse and their sexual abuse pursuits and who they were targeting, all of these things. These were painful things to hear. They were hurtful things to hear, but I had to endure it. Because had I not endured it, I would have been able to help the person. And there's going to be a lot of instances where people, when they make themselves vulnerable and comfortable to share things about their lives with you, there are going to be things that are going to make you uncomfortable. There are going to be things that are going to make you hurt people really badly. But then you have to realize, you have to recognize and accept the reality that that's not going to necessarily solve the issue. Even though you may want to do it, that's not going to solve the issue. What is going to solve the issue is us engaging those situations by what I mentioned by REP, respect, empathy, and patience. And then also, if or when a person comes to you and say that they have been victimized by abuse, believe them. Believe them. Believe them. Don't dismiss it. Don't say, oh, this person is just saying this to get attention. Let's not do that. Because unfortunately, there's been far too many times where people have been victimized via abuse. And because their allegations were not taken seriously, their abuse did not stop. And for some people, because they were not believed, it ended up costing them their lives. There's another stat. At least 98% of people who make sexual abuse allegations, they're telling the truth. Statistically, only 2% of people who make sexual allegations, only 2% of people who make sexual allegations are lying. Only 2%. 98% of people who make those types of allegations are telling the absolute truth. So on average, if a person is saying that they were a victim and casualty of sexual abuse, there's a very low probability that they're lying. And then just in terms of general principle, it's always better to believe someone and then investigate the issue and then find out that they were lying, as opposed to dismissing them and then later on finding out that they were telling the truth. Because when you wait that long, it's already too late. And some people don't come back from that type of abuse. And again, like I mentioned, 98% of people who I've counseled pertaining to suicide were sexually abused at least once during their lifetime. So for us as Muslims, for us as human beings, for us as people, we have to do a better job at addressing this specific type of issue. Any issue of oppression, we have to do a better job. But this particular issue, we have to do a better job. We have to do a better job for ourselves so that we are not guilty in the eyes and the sight of Allah on the day of standing for not doing something. And then we have to do a better job for our fellow Muslim. We have to do a better job for our fellow man, for our fellow human being, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. Because these issues are real, and these issues cause damage, and they hurt people, and they cause potentially irreversible damage. So we need to be the people who are empowered to help find solutions to these issues. And we ask Allah to make us of those who come up with the solutions. And we ask Allah to protect us from being of those who are the problem. We ask Allah to protect us from being victims and casualties of sexual abuse. We ask Allah to protect us from being those who abuse in any form. We ask Allah to make us of those who aid the oppressed. We ask Allah to make us of those who aid the oppressor. We ask Allah to give us the tools of empowerment to help give the oppressed healing. We ask Allah to make us of those who have the basala, the courage to seize the hand of the oppressor. We ask Allah to make us of those who have the basala, the courage to stop the oppressor, to stop the oppression. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين واقيموا الصلاه ان الصلاه تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. استووا واعتدلوا في الصلاة يرحمنا ويرحمكم الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.